we hear, we watch review videos on headphones, and we see the new buzzword that I've never really seen used in the 2-channel side of things. I guess they use other adjectives to describe sound, but timbre seems to be a word that you hear a lot. And, I guess it could be self-described. I don't know, but timbre is more or less, I guess, the lifelike essence of the playback of recorded music, where if you're listening to, they might break it down into sections like mid-range timbre or high-frequency timbre. It's really how all the frequencies relate to each other in what you're listening to, and if they're a sound of proper balance, right, so that it sounds natural to you. Mm-hmm. So if the timbre's off in the mids, like it's too bright or too recessed, then the mid-range timbre is not equal or even with the bass and the high-frequency timbre, and then you don't have, it doesn't sound real. It sounds like somebody mixed it wrong, right? Mm. So, but the thing is, what I think more than that, what we want to talk about is like within a given high-end system, what creates timbre or what varies the timbre of the music. And,
well, everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. And that is the word. That's true, And I think more than what people appreciate.
A bit of everything and nothing at the same time, though. Because you do see a lot of weird focus at times. I've seen quite a few people that talk about how this one thing totally changed their system. And wow, it totally solved my problems. And maybe for them it does. But usually they either have unusual tastes, they're a little outside of the norm, or they had something wrong with their system and it was correcting a problem that most people don't have.
Well, yeah, you could just yank one cable out and put a different one in and bam, that issue goes away or resolves itself. And actually, cables are a huge part of timbre. People don't realize it, but the part of timbre is that harmonic structure and the fine details of the music. It's not the brute volume of it. It's the milliwatt range, not the watt range. And so timbre is created with those little tiny signals. And that's the stuff that gets filtered out with shitty cables, shitty power, cheap equipment, cheap speakers.
Well, yeah, high noise floor.
Yeah, noise floor. Yeah, all this stuff is basically masking or eliminating the system's ability to reproduce subtleties. This tiny range of music. That's where the lifelike essence is of timbre. And that's what, even you can be off on tonality a little bit here and there, which means the freak response is a little off, right? But if you throw in a gob of timbre or harmonic richness,
a dollop of timbre,
life is good. Yeah, you need turn up the timbre knob.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Someone should make a timbre knob.
Timbre thing.
You probably could.
Yeah,
you could probably combine
it's like a bunch of tubes
reverb
or something.
with right. Yeah, just throw a set exactly. Just throw a set of tubes in there. Call it a day.
It's a tricky thing though, because it really depends on the state of your system. And it's not really like a one-size-fits-all type of deal thing. It's very difficult to say this is the perfect formula to have perfect timbre.
Yeah, that's impossible, actually.
So you see people talking about that, saying, wow, this fixed my problem. Then other people do the same thing, and it doesn't do anything for them, or it makes it worse.
It is a system-by-system basis. And, in fact, with speakers, it's room-dependent, way room-dependent, too, which is another variable.
Well,
no one's
in
the same room. Yeah. So therefore, you're right. That's the same deal. Someone says, "Oh, this fixed my problem," and the guy's like, "Oh, don't do mine." Well, yeah, because he had a different problem you did. You just described it the same,
right.
But it was the cause was different. So
yeah, there's so many factors when you start thinking about it. Because even if you had the same size room and everything, it's like, what about the wall construction, the floor? How maybe you got the higher
height of the ceiling, the dimensions of the room.
So yeah,
where are you sitting? Where's the furniture? How many people are in the room? Where's the windows?
What's the couch you're sitting on made out of?
Rooms are brutal. Yeah. Well, fortunately, in the headphone world, we don't have to freaking deal with that.
That's nice.
Your room is preset. How well that is done is a different story. But now in headphones, true. That's come to think of it. Some things that do change timbre are the headphone itself, and you see that with headphone makers that need to use large amounts of damping material in their headphones, where they're trying to dampen the driver for whatever reason. Usually it's to make it sound softer or quieter, and that will actually, to me at least, you're filtering out the negatives, but you're also filtering out very low level detail, which again will diminish the lifelike presence of the sound. It just can't help it. It's going to filter it out, and that's what you're looking at. It's an acoustic filter, versus not having anything there. So a lot of headphones do that. They, through meshes they use to protect themselves, or on the headphone, on the ear pads, there's a mesh. There might be a screen inside. There could be absorptive materials inside, and all that is additive to kind of diminishing that lifelike presence.
Yeah, well, we tried a lot of stuff trying to figure out what we were going to put in the ear pads. And yeah, they all do something different. They all sound different.
Yeah, just by the material itself. Could have the same shape.
Yep.
It's just the surface material. The surface of the material will make a difference, and how it reflects the music internally. It sets up the acoustic, and the driver and the wiring and everything. But
even beyond that, though, the material could even be the same. We've had a few examples where the material was claimed to be the same material. It's just the way it was constructed was different. The pore size and the surface finish makes an impact. Sometimes very considerable impact into specific frequency ranges. If you look at different foams, sometimes the very top surface of the foam is kind of like skinned over.
Right.
And that makes a big difference compared to something that was out of a big block and it was cut, and now you have exposed pores.
Yeah, it goes from being absorptive to reflective.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally changes it. So it's really sensitive.
And it doesn't take a lot. You're talking about tiny pieces in headphones. You don't need a lot of this stuff. But some places do use a lot of it in various ways that are, might not be visible to the average consumer. Most people don't rip open their headphones and go, "Oh, there's a block of foam inside."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most take it at face value, and the way it sounds is the way it sounds. But
yeah, you could make it sound like, with the same driver, you could make stuff sound like whatever you really want to.
You could drop the highs way into the mud, or open it way up. That's what a lot of modifiers, right? They take headphones, they take a driver, put it in a totally different enclosure, and wow, it sounds way better. Yeah,
you could totally change it.
Yeah, right. It's the eye beholder. But bottom line is that has to do with the manufacturing side of it. But from a system standpoint, where customers have control over, is where we want to talk about really where you can improve. And I would suggest, the biggest suggestion to me is pay particular attention. Given a system, and you have good DAC source, right? Good amp, good headphones. Your next objective is the cable chain, and that will definitely change the way low frequency information gets to the ear. So you have to start experimenting with that and say, well, change an interconnect, change the headphone. A lot of people play with the headphone cables, which makes sense. It's like the equivalent of a speaker cable.
Well, yeah, same thing.
Yeah, You're plugging into an amplifier, and you have a speaker load at the other end, and a cable in between is like a speaker cable for headphones.
But I suppose one of the more complicated things about this, especially in headphones, is different things have a different amount of control over the final audio. So some things are a really fine knob, and you can make an adjustment with them, but it's not necessarily as coarse as you need in a particular circumstance. So what works for you may not work for another. And this is the sort of thing that I suppose experience really aids in.
That's true. I mean, you might have a bright piece of gear in there, and no matter what cables you put on it, sure, you're working toward the goal of dropping down that brightness, but the reality of it is you're not dealing with the root cause of the problem, which is the source being bright. So trying to use cables as tone controls is kind of an old school way of doing it. And it's really not the right way to go. To use cables, to put better cables in there is to fine tune what a good system.
Yeah, you can't completely change it.
Yeah, if you got a gross error in there that's driving you nuts, get rid of the gross error, because otherwise you're
just fighting.
You're putting more errors into it to make up for it.
Yeah.
So now you got a whole system full of that,
yeah.
and that doesn't get you to where you want to go. In the end, now you got all kinds of problems, and you can never take any of that out and swap it, because you're always looking to put the same errors back in. I call them faults.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to diminish faults. So the idea is to try to get rid of the gross errors, gross faults, and buy good gear, and then fine tune the timbre, the micro detail with cabling and power cords, and you'd be surprised at that point, because now it's like the onion peeling away, right? You go deeper into the system. You're hearing more little tiny stuff.
Well, you got to get that foundation right.
Yeah. And
everything else is just,
especially having an amp that does good bass, good source that can do bottom end. Bottom end tends to be a premium in audio, high end audio, right? Think about it. With everything,
well, especially speakers, you need bigger speakers usually
for a room. Yeah, but with headphones, even then, the limitation tends to be the amp and the DAC or the source. They always, if they go anyway, they always go lean. They always sound lean.
We should probably go over like a priority list, because you sometimes see people with a really bright headphone or a really dark headphone, and they try to fix it with having the opposite in the rest of their gear. If you have a bright headphone, let's find the darkest amplifier I could find.
Overcorrection
right?
and such.
And that might work. The end result might be fine, but it doesn't always produce the results you want, because now you change something else in the system and you think it'll have an effect, but the effect could be massively different than
Or
you
you get a
expect.
different headphone and you go, holy shit, this system's
Or
dark
that,
as
yeah,
hell.
like your
Right?
system isn't universal.
You completely skewed the system to one
Yeah.
way to
Yeah.
make for a headphone.
Well, I know for me, like not having an R2R DAC at home, and coming here and then we have one. That's like the big. It's always like, oh, this sounds completely different to what I'm
We
used
got to
to.
get you one of those.
Yeah,
I
waiting
know
for the
they
new
are.
11 audio.
You do get used to that kind of sound
Yeah.
where all of a sudden you realize that
Yeah, that changes the timbre
single chip solution wasn't
Yeah.
really the way to roll.
completely different.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
need to throw my deck out.
Huh.
It's the weak link for sure. We talked about this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But I would say for me, this is, of course, probably what most people will be looking for out of this video. The most important thing that's going to dictate your timbre, if you ask me, starts with the headphone. Probably the biggest variation
No doubt.
possible right
Speakers.
there. And then moving down, the amplifier next. Are we
Yes.
in agreement there?
Agreed.
Right?
You got to
And
have
then
the
It needs to
power.
be able to
Assuming,
drive.
it, assuming it needs
Granular.
the power, it needs power to drive.
Those are
Yeah.
important. Those are
Which
big players.
almost all better headphones like
Well,
like
or you
power.
could be in the opposite direction. You have a really high-end IEM and you don't want a lot of power though.
Well, you need the right amp for your
Yeah.
headphone.
You need
Then
the
you,
right
gotta,
amp.
you need a really
Yeah.
quiet amp.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are important. You get the right headphone, the right amp, you're pretty good. Then everything else is kind of a fine knob. Your DAC,
Right.
it matters. And I would say it's probably, depending on your system, the next most important thing. But beyond that, it's not that these things don't matter. They matter less. But everything else needs to be right for you to really notice them. If everything else is way out of whack, if your headphone's wrong, your amp's wrong, it's not to say that a cable, power cord, or whatever, some other sort of thing won't make a difference, or even a DAC. But you'll notice it less. It'll
Well, I
make
think-
less of an impact if the rest of your system is wrong.
If you look at it like cooking, right? It's like, yeah, if you screw the whole meal up, there's no amount of little salt in there to fix it, right?
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
going to do
right.
nothing.
Yeah.
Just a little seasoning.
And no amount of hot sauce will
Yeah,
solve
right.
this problem.
At some point, it doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
So it's not to say that the hot sauce doesn't matter, but it has a limited control. And to some people, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make the difference to them in the system.
Right.
They're happy with it as is. That's perfectly fine if you don't like hot sauce. But to plenty of people, it's super critical. And I'm always surprised by how closely people pay attention to these things. Because to some people, all they care about is the broad strokes. Is it pretty good? Cool. I'm happy. And they don't care past that. Other people, they will spend countless hours trying to figure out how to get that last 0.00001% better.
It's more like weeks and months and years.
Well, yeah, some people spend a
countless.
lifetime, right?
Yeah, right. It never
Some people
ends.
spend crazy time, and
Yeah.
what they're talking about, this differences, could be absolutely trivial, and a trained observer might never hear them in their lifetime. But to these people, they hear it,
Yeah.
and you could laugh all you want, but I've seen plenty of people that they reliably
They're
prove
focused.
Yeah.
they could hear a difference that you would think is not
That's the thing.
possible.
They've been focused on one particular thing for so long
You get
that
pretty good at it.
nobody's looking at.
Right, and nobody else really cares about it,
Yeah.
but they are hyper focused on that
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Yeah, that
Hey,
takes
that-
time.
Well, at least you got to admit, at least they have a
You got a goal.
They
You
got a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as narrow, as wide as it might be.
yeah.
You know?
Obviously, that's not normal.
That's not
that-
happen.
That's
Yeah.
kind of true, though. I mean, I guess when you think about it, when you start beginning in this thing, this whole high-end journey, your goal is way wider. It's huge because
Right.
you really
Gigantic.
you don't really know. You're not sure which way you're going. You're not really sure where it's going to take you. You've never been there before. And it definitely does narrow. And I think everything in life is probably
You
like
hope.
this. As
Yeah.
you get older, your goals narrow because you've already figured out what you could throw away everything that you know you don't need to concentrate on anymore.
Yeah.
Which is good because as you get older, your brain doesn't want to deal with that shit anymore either. So anyway, I guess we really, as usual, gone in a tangent
Yeah.
on this.
Well, it's a
but
fickle subject.
Well, I mean, we like 10 years ago, whenever when we were just getting into headphones, we ran into that. It's like you didn't really know anything, and now you're like thinking, was there ever a time we didn't know anything about this?
Yeah.
Some things are so obvious,
you
right?
forgot what you didn't know already.
Yeah.
And it's tricky.
Yeah.
Coming into it with no knowledge, it's hard to really grasp the details people are talking about and understand how relevant they are. Because sometimes people talk about something like it's so substantial, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, they're talking
But-
to other people that are at
can't
that
see the
same
forest
level.
for the trees and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, effectively that.
Yeah.
But in a little community, sometimes these things matter more than they probably should. But if that's where you are, that's good. That means everything else is eliminated. You hope, and you're really focused in on the narrow things.
Well, bottom line, don't be afraid to try anything. You know, I mean, keep an open mind about everything. It'll allow you to experiment on your own personal journey on this audio experience, and then you figure out what works for you. That's really what, bottom line is what matters. Some things don't work for people, and other things work well for people. So you really just got to try it. Never go into something going, that's not going to work, or some guy told me that doesn't work. People don't know everything.
Yeah.
Without a doubt,
Yeah.
you
You know,
got to be open-minded.
We've ran
Otherwise,
into a
it's-
few of those things
I run
lately.
it all day long.
Yeah, where I was like, I don't think this is gonna be worse, and then it turns out to be
Try
better.
it. Yeah, you got to try it.
Yeah, because it might work for you.
Yeah.
And
I've
that's all
seen
that
far too
matters.
many things that work that shouldn't have worked.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, don't be afraid of that. That goes for anything in life. Don't excuse something out of sight just because it's like, well, I don't think so. Now, I wouldn't go trying jumping off of bridges thinking you could fly or anything.
Well, yeah,
That's probably not going to work out.
That's a different thing.
could be
yeah.
a problem.
Trust me, you won't fly.
But
You will
maybe.
hit hard whenever you do hit something.
Have you ever tried it?
No,
Yeah.
but I could picture that. You're right. I've never tried it. But physics and everything I've ever learned in life has taught me that gravity is a bitch. Yes.
I guess you got to look at the risk versus reward, and on that one, maybe a little skewed.
Yeah, I think that
Well, the
one.
reward is great. If you could fly, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't think that's the way to find out.
Oh, probably
You
not.
need a backup plan
Yeah.
in case you can't fly.
yeah.
Like a trampoline, a mattress,
A trampoline.
a lot of foam.
I wouldn't jump off a bridge onto a trampoline.
A
No.
lot of
Yeah,
foam.
no.
A lot of foam. Okay.
On that note, we better get the hell out of here. Thank you, everybody. Well, please subscribe. The holidays are coming, so Santa might be here, so you don't want to miss that.
Oh, yeah.
Take care of yourself.